This episode is brought to you by Soxsense Toe Socks. Toe socks that are designed for comfort, balance, and healthy movement. Head on over to Soxsense.com, use the code Stretch2Go on your order, and now let's head on to today's episode. Welcome to the Stretch2Go Podcast. My name is Ian Ray, your host. Today I have Stephen Sashen
of Xero Shoes.
Stephen, welcome to the Stretch2Go Podcast.
Well, thank you. Two things. First of all, not that it matters, but for people who are sticklers, it's Broomfield, because in the fields, they made the whatever material it was that they made brooms out of. I don't even know what that was called. Secondly, for people watching, I love that you have two shoes in the foreground because it's reminding me of something that I've wanted to do for a long time, which is make a shoe that actually is 3 feet long and have it seemingly in the foreground of a shot and then pick it up and it's really 3 feet long. I have a fondness for forced perspective illusions. So you're reminding me of my favorite.
Okay, cool. I don't have enough room for two pairs, so I might as well put one on each.
Works for me. We'll talk about this later.
Yeah, so Stephen, you have been in the barefoot shoe industry or barefoot for how many years?
Well, I'll say it slightly differently. I helped start this whole thing. So there was just a few of us who really began creating products once the barefoot shoe or the barefoot running idea came out in 2009. That's when it got really popular. And, I mean, a little before that started to, but didn't really kick in until 2009. So that's when we started Xero Shoes in November of 2009. So 16 and change years ago.
What was it that inspired you to creating Xero Shoes?
So 2 years before that, a little over 2 years before that, when I was 45, I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break. And I spent the next 2 years getting injured pretty much nonstop. I literally don't think I went more than 2 weeks without being injured. And one day, one of my training partners, who's a world champion cross-country runner, and I'm a sprinter, said, why don't you try running barefoot and see what you learn? And I said, okay. And it just so happened there was a group of us getting together with a barefoot running coach the next week. So we went out and I did my first barefoot run. And it was, again, I'm a sprinter. It's the third time I've said it. So that's apparently very important. And I'd never run more than a mile of my own volition before that. And I hated everything after the first 100 meters. So we do this barefoot run and I'm so transfixed by the experience of feeling my bare feet on all the different surfaces that we ran on, roads and trails and sidewalks and grass and, I mean, you name it. And I was experimenting with my gait in every way that I could think of. What happens if I run faster with the same cadence, the same steps per minute, or slower at the same cadence, or run with faster cadence at the same speed, or slower cadence at the same speed? What if I land on this part of my foot or that part of I mean, just anything I could think of, I was trying, and I was just, it was blowing my mind. It was so interesting. At the end of this run, I turned to someone who had a GPS watch on, and I said, how far was that? And she said, that was a little over 5K. I was like, sorry, what? I mean, I had no idea, and I could have kept going, but we all just came to a stop as a group. Well, there was one other thing that happened. I ended up with a blister on the ball of my left foot. Now, I know that many people in that situation would go, see, this is because I got a blister on the ball of my left foot. But my thought was, how come my right foot is fine? And by the way, it's my left leg that's getting injured more often. So that was interesting to me. The next week, we did another run, and I thought if I could find a way to run that didn't hurt the gaping hole I still had on the bottom of my foot, then I probably wasn't doing the thing that caused said gaping hole in the first place. So I figured I'd give it 10 minutes. If it didn't work, I would just try again. Maybe, I know if it didn't work, most people would just give up, but I was just kind of curious still. So 9 minutes and 30 seconds of agony later, it all changed. Literally in one stride. My running got faster, easier, lighter, more enjoyable. And what happened, I'll explain what happened in a sec, but suffice it to say, after that, my injuries just went away over the next couple of weeks. I became faster as a result of all that too. For the last 15 years, I think, maybe 16, I've been an Masters All-American sprinter, so one of the fastest guys in my age group in the country. And what happened, and I'll get to the Xero part in a second, is that I had been, because I'm a sprinter, the idea is you're supposed to land on the ball of your foot. Well, I was doing that by pointing my toes a little bit and landing with my foot too far in front of my body. So I'm basically landing on the ball of my foot, but putting on the brakes with every step. And so that horizontal force was creating abrasion, which turned into a blister. And I just stopped doing that. That's what happened when everything changed. So I wanted that barefoot experience, as much as I could have it. It was clearly valuable. And I started making sandals based on a 10,000-year-old design idea. Just, made some for my wife and for the other barefoot runners. I made about 50 pairs. And the coach from that first run said, if you had a website for this sandal making hobby of yours, I could put you in a book that I'm writing about barefoot running. And I have been an internet marketer since 1992. I have made hundreds of websites. So I rushed home to tell my wife this incredible opportunity. And she told me I was a complete idiot and it was a bad idea, wouldn't make any money, a waste of time. Don't do it, she insisted. And I told her that I wouldn't. And then, she went to bed before I did. I built a website. And she kind of growled at me the next morning, and I said, it'll be a good case study for a search engine business we had started. And I was right and wrong. I was right. It would have been a good case study, but it went so well right out of the gate that she walked in about 2 weeks after I launched the website and said, okay, I'm all in. Let's run this thing. And it was mostly not just because we had built the site, but literally from day one, we were hearing people saying, oh my God, these things are changing my life. So we had a sneaking suspicion we were onto something. And that was, again, a little over 16 years ago. And now, from having a do-it-yourself sandal making kit back in 2009, we have 75 different styles of casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals that people wear for everything from taking a walk to hiking up a mountain to hanging out with friends to playing pickleball to playing in the NBA and literally almost everything else you could think of.
Okay, so you were not in the whole apparel or sports performance. You were an internet marketer. I mean, you were building websites. That was your career back then?
What happened is I had a software company that I started back in 1992, and I got into internet marketing for that company. And then after that company sort of slowed down, I wasn't really doing much. I'd done some consulting. I mean, I've been selling things online since 1992. That's the bottom line, but had nothing to do with footwear or apparel or anything related to this market.
Crazy. So this has been really like nothing for you building Xero website. I mean, the Xero Shoes, because it is basically
it was pretty simple.
E-commerce. Yeah.
I mean, the early days, it was pretty simple. We had basically one product on day one. We had a second product maybe 6 months later. We had a third product, somewhere around there. I mean, but we didn't have our first closed-toe shoe until the fall of 2016, and then the next one in the spring of 2017. So it was pretty simple in the early days, except that it was growing really fast, and managing that was tricky.
So was you in the beginnings? I guess how big was your team?
Well, it started out my wife and me, and then we hired someone to do customer service pretty quickly because I'm technically good at it, but practically not good at it. Because if somebody has a problem, it makes me really anxious, and I just want to alleviate my anxiety as quickly as possible. So I don't have necessarily the best bedside manner when I know someone's problem and I know the solution, and they want to tell me their whole story, and I just want to get to the solution. So we knew immediately, got to get someone who's much more patient than I am. And then the next person, so that person was living on our dining room table every day, or sitting at it. And then the next person we hired a couple months later was someone to handle all of the shipping. So that person was camped out in our living room. And then we moved into an office. Let's see, we ended up on Shark Tank. We taped an episode of Shark Tank in the summer of 2012. And I think we moved into our office right before that, where we then had another customer service person. Somewhere right in there, we had met the man who became our chief product officer. Maybe we had a third. I mean, I can't remember. Again, it grew pretty quickly during that era, so I don't remember a whole lot. But it started out with just me and Lena for quite a while.
And then Shark Tank, I know that's where I heard about Xero Shoes, Shark Tank. But do you think that played a huge role in, I guess, brand awareness?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It did, because we were in front of over 7 million people, and it blew up our website the time that it aired. We taped in July of 2012. It aired in the end of January 2013, and then again beginning of June 2013. And both times crashed our website. So it got a lot of awareness, but then all we had was a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. So it was not the most accessible by the most people. That said, there are people to this day who recognize me from that show, either because they watched it way back then, or it's been in reruns ever since. And More recently, CNBC called us one of the biggest Shark Tank misses. So whenever people talk about the companies that the Sharks were wrong about were the most successful post Shark Tank companies, we're usually on both of those lists. So people recognize us from seeing it there. But the biggest thing it did is it gave us validation that we were onto something. People who were not barefoot runners, never heard about the book Born to Run, they just hated shoes or wanted more freedom or liked the idea of something, a sandal that they could make. They liked the DIY thing. And we just heard from people all around the world saying, where have you been all my life? And then again, we started getting the feedback, the reviews from people saying, getting out of regular shoes and all the problems they create and into this little sandal has literally changed my life. So that was the thing that really, basically, from the moment we were told we were going to be on the show until the moment like a couple weeks after it aired, that's what made us shift from thinking this will be a little business that maybe makes a car payment to, oh my gosh, this is a really big deal and we have to get on this ride and take it as far as we can. Because around that same time, frankly, is when it became more and more clear to me, the more I learned and the more I talked to people in the footwear industry, that the major footwear companies, their products were, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, they were literally causing the problems that they claimed to cure. And worse, the people at the top of those companies, they all knew it and they weren't going to do anything about it. And I know this because some people who were at the top of those companies told me. And that was just, for whatever reason, I don't like it when people make a living by lying to their customers or harming their customers. And I realized I was in a situation where I could do something about that. So that was another bit of motivation.
Here's the question. If traditional footwear was invented today, would everything we know about foot function and fascia, would it even pass a medical ethics board?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Look, on Nike's website, they have they published a portion of an abstract of a study that they designed and commissioned that proves A, that their shoes injure people at a very high rate, and that B, different shoe designs that they have injure people at different rates, which is an interesting thing. What makes the difference is a question. Basically, this part is not on their website, but it's on the study that I have a copy of. It's a question of how many protective features they add. And basically, the shoe with more protective features injured more people. So no, it would not pass muster under any serious research.
So yeah, you must be fired up. I mean, your passion is, like doing the right thing for right people. I mean, you've been on this, you've seen it. I think more and more people are seeing that their eyes are opening and they're like, oh my gosh, it is my foot. But there's just not a huge collective agreement on it.
No, because we have 50 years of very good marketing that we're combating. And once human beings believe something, it's very tricky to get them to unbelieve that, let alone believe something different. And they've been told things that sound like they make sense until you investigate them for a very long time. And I mean, one argument that people give us is, well, if it's so bad for you, then how could these companies still sell their product? And I go, yeah, we didn't know cigarettes were bad for you till the 70s. So, that has never stopped people from making money.
So how about this question? Do you think modern shoes are creating patients for podiatrists the same way ultra-processed food created patients for endocrinologists?
I'm pausing on that one because I'm not necessarily going to land on the ultra-processed comparison for a lot of reasons. Because frankly, the biggest thing that has caused a problem for human beings is obesity, and that's a function of calories. And for anyone who wants to argue that, don't argue with me. It's not worth the effort. Mostly because I'm going to do the calorie thing for the fun of it. Some people like to say it's not calories in, calories out. It is calories in, calories out. The problem is we can't accurately measure calories in or calories out, but we know that if you're consuming fewer calories than you're expending, you will lose body mass. And if you're consuming more than you're expending, you will gain body mass. But we can't accurately measure things, so you can ignore the rest. I mean, there are some minor changes about, the thermic effect of food, but those are negligible. So, but the biggest thing is, yeah, there's no question that the modern athletic shoe in particular, and dress shoes too, are, and high-heeled shoes, they are putting money in the pockets of healthcare providers. Most of them are, how do I want to put it? They also believe things like an orthotic is a good idea. Supporting your foot and making it so that it doesn't move is a good idea. So they're not being malicious. They just don't know what they don't know. But look, I read this the other day. There was a doctor who was commenting on the big super shoes, the big thick shoes. And in the process, the article argued about or made a comment about barefoot shoes and the whole barefoot running movement. And this doctor said, "Oh, I love the whole barefoot running thing. It's giving me more patients than I've ever had." 1972 and 73, doctors were making the same argument about running shoes, which were brand new. So make up your mind, which is it? And the reality is, when we're talking about footwear, I want to make this very clear. We're not talking about footwear. We're talking about proper form and human function. And so what I've said to some of these doctors when they go, "Oh, these barefoot shoes are giving me more patients," I went, "We're talking about gait. Have you done any gait in it?" First of all, when someone comes in and says they're running barefoot, did you ask if they're actually barefoot or if they're wearing a shoe that's called barefoot? They never have said yes to that. I go, if they say they're wearing a barefoot shoe, did you ask them to show it to you? Because out of all the barefoot shoe companies, there's a very small percentage that are actually making shoes that have all the characteristics of something that lets your foot do what's natural. Spread your toes, bend, flex, feel the ground, and be really lightweight. And they've never said yes to that. And I go, and we're talking about gait analysis. Have you analyzed their gait? They go, no. I go, then what are you talking about? You have no idea what you're referring to. And I can show it to you. It's like, why don't we take your next patient who comes in, who complains about this, and ask them if they're running barefoot, ask them what shoes they're wearing if they're not, and get some video of their gait, and I'll do an analysis and we can find out what the actual problem is. Because I can tell you what the problem's going to be. It's typically that they're either overstriding and still heel striking, or overstriding and plantar flexing, the thing that caused my blister. But if you keep doing that, you're going to get a stress fracture. Or they say their Achilles, they've got an Achilles tendonitis. I go, yeah, because they have been wearing a higher heeled shoe. So their brain has learned that their brain has basically come to the conclusion that the Achilles can only stretch a certain amount, say 70% of its maximum stretch value. And if you just switch immediately and put more stretch into the Achilles before your brain knows it's safe, you're going to be fighting with your brain, and that's going to lead to Achilles tendonitis. So, or you're pushing off the ground too hard, or you're trying to stay on your toes. These are all gait related things or neurological things. They have nothing to do with the damn footwear. They have to do with how your body is working and is it working correctly or not. So it just so happens, if this is Daniel Lieberman's research from 2009, 2010, is you take people who've never worn shoes and you look at their gait and it's great. And then you put shoes on them and it immediately gets worse. They immediately start overstriding and heel striking and putting force into their knee, into their hip, into their back that they weren't doing before because they were landing in a way where their muscles, ligaments, and tendons were functioning properly as springs and shock absorbers and joint protectors. Anyway, I could go on that all day, but so yes is the answer to your question.
Yeah, my understanding with footwear now at my age is that footwear is a tool to get into barefoot shoes. It's a privilege because you have to work your way, the dysfunction of the foot, right, to get into barefoot shoes. Like, it's not going to solve your problem. It will help guide you to the right direction.
Well, yes, as my wife likes to say, it's a coach. And to be clear, the transition is not rocket science. Like, if you're comfortable walking around your house in bare feet, you can wear a barefoot shoe and walk around. If you've been running for some reason in bare feet, then you're fine. But the simple thing is, if all I did is say, like, walk and run in bare feet, just that's it. Just take off your shoes, get rid of your shoes. I don't care where you live. Just live in bare feet. You would very quickly, you'd immediately change your gait into something that feels better. Because when you're in bare feet, let's talk about running. Good form feels good, bad form hurts. And if you pay attention and know that you have no other choice, if you're not dumb enough to think, I just need to endure it, but you want to go, how do I make it so this is not unpleasant? If I think, how can I make this enjoyable and or fun? You will use that feedback that you're getting from the ground, from your feet, and make changes to your gait until it feels fine. We're just doing the same thing fundamentally, but frankly, not quite as good, because any little thing between you and the ground is reducing that feedback some. But there's also times where, as you said, it's a tool. Barefoot is ideal. It's also not necessary, or let's say barefoot is best. It's not necessarily ideal. Like if you're trying to get into a restaurant, or if you're, doing technical rock climbing, or, things like that.
Yeah, it's my past injuries from high school, and I think we kind of talked about this previously, but playing sports, going to the athletic trainer's room, they tape you, ice you, but they don't really teach you the prevention for you to not come back and to strengthen it. That's something that 20 years ago, I'm sure maybe today they don't teach you, maybe they are, I'm not sure, but that's something at a younger athlete they should be teaching how to prevent injuries.
It's getting there. I'll tell you, one of the places that I'm very excited about where that message is starting to wake people up is the NBA and WNBA. We have a number of players who've been wearing the shoe that I'm staring at that you have in the foreground, one of them, and they've been teaching their teammates, and actually their coaches and trainers are hip to this, but they've all been teaching the teammates through their success that a well-designed shoe can strengthen your feet, can help with balance, can make you more injury resistant, and it takes a while to snap people out of that trance that, we need big, thick shoes with a lot of padding, cushioning, flared soles, arch sport, super heavy, et cetera. In the same way, back to, I mentioned this software company I had way back when. It was a program for film and television writers, and I thought it would instantly take over the Hollywood world. It didn't. The first year, there was like a handful of early adopters who decided to try it, and it did really well. And the next year, some of the people who had worked for those early adopters spread the news. And then by the third year, it took over. I'm expecting something similar, maybe one more year than that in the NBA, WNBA, and other sports that we're participating in, where the first season we had a few players, everyone thought it was crazy. Now, after the end of that season, everyone saw that those players did really well. Now we're in the second season and they're seeing it again with a few more players, some who we're not sponsoring or endorsing in any way, but they've been wearing the shoes in training and they go, this is what I want to play in. So they're just playing in that shoe because they weren't getting paid to wear their other shoes. So what the hell? And when that happens, that's a big deal. When people are wearing it with no payment involved whatsoever, that says something different. So I'm expecting that by the beginning of next season, it's going to get very interesting in professional basketball.
Yeah, of course, big brands, they would get paid to wear their shoes. So it makes sense. Even the off season, I see a lot of, sports performance trainers getting them to be barefoot athletes, right? Training them.
Yeah.
So they know the importance.
The thing we say, look, here's the line that I love, came from a guy who used to work for us. He said, you go to the gym and you're going to try and make everything stronger from the ankles up. No one thinks about making the stuff below the ankles that supports everything from the ankles up stronger. And the easiest way to do that is just walking in a pair of our shoes. There's research showing that builds foot strength as much as doing an exercise program for your feet. So what we say to athletes is, look, I'm not telling you to play in our shoes. Just wear this stuff when you're off the court, off the field, hanging out, doing whatever. And then go in the gym and wear them in the gym. And then for basketball, if you're doing a shoot around and warming up, wear them there. Eventually you'll see what the effect is and you'll know for yourself when it's time to start giving it a whirl and play for 5 minutes in a game. Don't play the whole game. Just, build it up slowly because confidence comes from experience. And the last thing you want to do is do too much too soon.
Sure. That's a good point as far as going to the next part. So trends, I notice more people who are seeing athletes getting into or training in barefoot shoes.
Yep.
Do you think that the misconception of barefoot shoes, even with educated health professionals, still get wrong about the importance of barefoot shoes?
Well, I'm going to say if they think that we're not appropriate for something like training, they're not educated. I mean, I know that sounds rude, but it's simple. The research could not be more clear that wearing a barefoot shoe this is just common sense. Let's do some common sense. Ready? Which is better, restriction or freedom?
Freedom.
Yeah. So most shoes have this pointy toe box that squeezes your toes together. What problems might that cause when your toes are squeezed together instead of being spread out enough for, to help with balance, for example?
Yeah. Just like doing a handstand. You wouldn't do a handstand closed. You have to
You don't do a handstand closed. You don't do push-ups closed. Same thing. Okay. Which is better, weaker or stronger?
Stronger.
Yeah, it's not a trick question. So if I'm going to make my arm weaker, which you don't want, how would I make my arm weaker?
To be atrophied, to not work on that muscle.
Yeah, don't use it.
Yeah.
Right, don't use it. If I put a cast on my arm around my elbow, it supports this joint so it doesn't move. And then all the muscles, ligaments, and tendons around that joint get weaker. You've got 33 joints in each foot. What happens when you're wearing a shoe or an orthotic that doesn't let your foot move? What happens to all those muscles, ligaments, and tendons?
It dies. It becomes blob.
Yeah, they get
Nothing.
weaker. So which is better when it comes to being, moving your body well, numbness or awareness?
Awareness.
So you have 200,000 nerve endings in the sole of each foot. Why? So your brain knows what you're stepping on or in to help you move effectively, efficiently, and enjoyably. How much can you feel through all the foam in this shoe?
Hardly.
Yeah. And last but not least, this is the easy one, or this is one that people think is subtle, but it's actually a big deal. Which is better, misalignment or proper posture?
Proper posture.
So when you elevate your heel, even a little bit, it tips you forward just a tiny bit. But, the taller you are, the more you end up tipped forward. And then you have to adjust somewhere in your knees, your hip, and your back. And that puts strain on those joints. So that's not good. So everything that we do is designed to let your toes spread. Here, wait, I'm going to hold up a shoe to do it. Wider foot-shaped toe box so your toes can be natural. Low to the ground for balance and agility. No elevated heel so we don't mess with their posture. Super flexible so your feet can do whatever they want. Although if they're doing what I'm showing right now, get to a hospital. And then also, the tread is giving you traction and protection, but also the ground feeling that your brain needs to help you move better. We also, one thing about the modern athletic shoe is they say you need to replace them every 200 to 300 miles. Well, that's because they're using materials that wear out in 200 to 300 miles. So we designed a different sole material, and we back our soles with a 5,000 mile sole warranty. So we just want to make something durable because that makes it more affordable no matter what the cost is. Something, if you have a shoe that costs you $100 and it wears out in 200 miles versus a shoe that costs you $200, which is not what we have, and it lasts you 4 times longer, which is the better deal?
The aforementioned,
Yeah.
the one that you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I gave a bad, and I didn't do the analogy well, so the answer followed.
No. Okay. Yeah. Because that's something that kind of brings me back. So I grew up in Hawaii, mostly barefoot, slippers, but even wearing slippers myself. I mean, I wore rubber slippers, so it's not fixed. There's still some clawing. Something I learned, and I thought it's fine, but even then I still had foot issues, probably from sports. But like, do you think even slippers itself, like rubber slippers, is that still causing some issues with the foot where it's not fixed?
I did I was in the lab with a researcher named Dr. Bill Sands. He used to be, I think, head of biomechanics for the U.S. Olympic Committee. And what we saw when we watched athletes not even athletes, just runners of various levels of skill and success. And for all but the elite runners, whatever you put on their feet or took off their feet changed their gait. Even a little bit. We took people who were, when they were running barefoot, had perfect form, and just put like the 5-finger shoes on their feet and their gait changed. Happily, with the sandals that we were selling at the time, their gait didn't change. That was like as close to barefoot as they were going to get. So they were still getting enough feedback that it didn't change their gait. But anything that's going to either reduce the amount of feedback that you get or give you cushioning, which is related to feedback. So there's 2 kinds of feedback. One is just, are you feeling the ground? And the other is, what's happening with the pressure? So there's a difference between pressure and force. The best way I can describe that is, if you've seen the slow motion video, was an early slow motion movie of this big fat circus guy getting a cannonball to the stomach. If you haven't seen it, I'll describe it. They shoot a cannonball at the guy's stomach, and he kind of bends around the cannonball, and you see ripples of fat, going out like a rock hitting a lake. And that's the pressure being spread out. And if you spread the pressure out, something can feel more comfortable. But then the force is the thing that shoved that guy back into the tarp, 10 feet behind him. And so the force, if you have a shoe that's spreading the pressure out, your foot doesn't feel it, but the force has to go somewhere. And if your leg is relatively straight, whether you're walking or running, that force is going to go into your knee, your hip, your back, all the way up to your neck possibly. And those joints don't have the same sensory feedback mechanisms that your foot does. So by the time you have a problem, it's been going on for by the time you can feel the problem, it's been going on for a long time. So it's possible. But again, my best answer would be, let me see your gait in those shoes. Let me see what happens when you take off those shoes. And that'll give us the real answer.
So there's a lot as far as gait analysis. I know at stores. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all nonsense.
Yeah. I figured that's for them to get into a shoe, say, hey, this is a shoe for you because you're walking this way. They don't really
Correct.
analyze the gait, correct? Yeah.
Well, they're analyzing it to determine, do you pronate? Do you supinate? Do you, do whatever? First of all, pronation is
You have
for
to have it.
90% of the people not a problem at all. It's literally not connected to injury in any way. It's part of the natural gait mechanism, the spring mechanism of your lower legs. But it's something that they have learned, oh, look for this thing and then sell this shoe. In fact, Brooks, I don't know if they're the company that invented this whole idea, but when Brooks has you do the analysis, they have you do it in your socks on a treadmill quite deliberately. They don't want you barefoot. They don't want you having the idea that you can actually run barefoot. So they'll do some running in your socks, which is a very different thing, or it can be a very different thing. And yeah, they are not using that to identify whether someone's gait is actually good or bad or needs to be improved, let alone, they're doing it to match you to a shoe that they have on the wall, which again has all those features that cause problems.
True. So even this question too, social media, I've heard different people saying you can wear barefoot shoes. You can wear these, like the running shoes that are like super curved and super cushioned for like, let's say, Olympic runners and whatnot. You can wear those for only running, but everything else you can wear barefoot shoes. Where is the balance, I guess?
Well, I'm okay with that for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
If you are an Olympic level athlete, you're going to do whatever it takes to give yourself an edge. And it seems to be that shoe is giving you an edge, whether it's because of the shoe or it's because of the psychology. Just placebo effects can be a big deal. Let me say a couple things there are a couple things. I'm going to answer this in a kind of backwards from the way you asked it. If somebody tells me they're really happy in one of those big, thick super shoes, I say exactly what you just said. Great, run in those. But as soon as you're done running, put on a pair of our shoes for active recovery, for building strength. And that strength is going to make you more injury resistant over time, which is important because there's a research physical therapist that I know who works a lot with major shoe companies who says those big, thick shoes can make you faster and your risk of injury is 100% because they're changing your gait and you literally don't have enough training time in that shoe to adapt to it because the shoes break down too quickly. The other thing is those shoes are only appropriate for a particular runner. So all foam is essentially tuned to a weight and speed. It works best if you have a certain body mass and your ground contact time is a certain duration. If you're running any slower or any faster and you weigh any more or any less, they can mess everything up. The frequency is all out of whack. Like when I try a pair as a sprinter, I'm a 150-pound sprinter. My ground contact time is very short. Those shoes, I felt like I was just stepping into sand. I just and then I could barely get out because they're not tuned to that amount of force in that short amount of time. So if you are not, for example, a 150-pound guy running a minute and 45-second 800, that shoe's probably not for you. Now, there's two things about that shoe, and the question is what's making people faster other than a placebo effect, which I'll come back to probably. Again, the cushion is tuned to a weight and speed. And it is more responsive than previous foams that were squishier and they were less responsive. That's true. But the biggest thing that seems to be making a difference is the height. So speed is just math. It's the number of steps per minute that you take times your stride length. And so if by getting higher, your stride length is increased by an inch, you're way faster over the course of a 10K or a marathon. Some people say, oh, it's the carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is only there for structure. It's not a spring. It's not a lever. It doesn't propel you forward. It's just there because that foam is so unstable that if they didn't put a layer of carbon in it, the foam would just shear almost instantly. So that's a misnomer. The placebo effect is this. Imagine you're one of the top 10 100-meter runners, 5K runners in the world, or marathon or whatever your longer distance race is. You're one of the top 10. And imagine you're at a race and there's guys, sometimes you win races, sometimes the people next to you win races. It's pretty even. Tomorrow, a guy shows up at a race in some new shoe. And for whatever reason, we don't know, doesn't matter. He wins that race. What are you going to go buy tomorrow?
The lightest shoe.
You're going to go buy the same thing he's wearing. Because it might be, here, as a former nationally ranked but not Olympic level gymnast, here's what I can tell you about professional athletes that I know. You were all, most of them were superstitious. I was even aware of my superstition and I would still do it. Like I knew before every meet, I wanted to have spaghetti made a very particular way and I would wear the same t-shirt every time. I knew that I was doing it and it was totally superstitious and had no effect on how I was going to do, but it made me feel comfortable. Didn't improve my performance, just made me feel better, like it was part of the whole warm-up routine. So there's just a lot of things that we do. I mean, my God, remember the hologram bracelets that everyone was wearing a couple years back?
I think so, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was just a bracelet with a thing that was a hologram. And they said, oh, it's just changing your energy. It didn't do anything. It's completely hand waving, total placebo. But my God, like every basketball and baseball player in America was wearing one until they all realized it didn't do anything.
Coming back to this.
Wait, hold on. Wait, I got to tell you a story about this. I was at a street fair where they were selling the hologram bracelets and they did some arm strength test to prove how good it was. So I put on the bracelet thing or I didn't have the bracelet thing and the guy measured my arm strength and it was like, strong. And then he measured it again and I got weak. And he said, see, that's what happened. Oh, no, wait, it's the other way around. Yeah. So he measures me and I'm weak. And then I put on the bracelet and he goes to measure me and I'm really strong. And he goes, see, that's because of the bracelet. I didn't put it on. When he wasn't looking, I threw it in the dirt behind me. And when I showed him that, he went, yeah, but you touched it. I was like, okay.
That's classic.
And, I wasn't trying to be rude about it. I was just curious. I mean, it's like, I want to do a real test.
I think it's more and more coming down to just the way that marketing is in essence about, and even mindset, changing people's mindset from, wearing regular shoes, from conventional shoes to barefoot shoes, or like from the importance of the foot. Like it's just mindset that people don't want to get into or they don't want to change. That's how I feel like it is nowadays.
Absolutely. Well, and rightly so to a certain extent. Look, if you're a professional runner, I will say to you, do not switch to our shoes during the season. And don't switch to our shoes unless you think there's a good reason to, because there is going to be a transition period. You are going to have to adapt. You're going to learn to relax certain muscles and strengthen other muscles. So I can give you good reasons to do it, but I don't want you to think that I helped you make a decision that impacted your career negatively. I'm not going to take that risk. It does remind me, though, there's a comedian that I adore from way back when, a guy named Jonathan Solomon, who told a joke. He says, and it's similar idea. It's like, we want all the bells and whistles in our shoes because that means they must be good. He's like, guys don't want to know all the details before they buy something. We're going to go buy a stereo. I'm looking for the Kenwood 11538 with the dual band, double bypass filter and the high end, low end receiver. Yeah, we're out of that one right now. Do you have anything with a whole lot of knobs and lights and things?
I see a lot of clients, patients at the chiropractors coming with low back pain. It seems to be non-specific low back pain. I know for a fact that most of the time they're saying, I have a hip, low back, that's where I'm hurting. But then recently, like I said, since I got into barefoot shoes and about the whole foot health, I started looking to people's foot. The way if it's a bunion, if it's just learning, they can't balance on one foot for too long. Just simple things for me to just kind of see where they're at functionally. From a biomechanics perspective, what happens upstream when knees hit spine and when the foot can't do this job?
Well, you nailed it. So rumor has it your feet are connected to your ankles, which are connected to your knee eventually, and then to your hip, and then your back and your spine, and et cetera, et cetera. So it can be upstream or downstream. If you have really weak glutes, that's going to impact your feet. Typically, if your glutes are weak, you're going to be internally rotated. You are going to be hyperpronated. You might have a flatter foot, which is a function of strength. Arch height is 90% genetic, but strength is 100% how much you use it or lose it. So weak glutes can be a factor that makes your feet less functional, less active, and weaker. Vice versa, if your feet are weak, often your glutes are going to follow because you're not supporting them correctly. So I can't give you a simple answer for that because that's going to be very idiosyncratic and unique to, well, not unique. There's going to be 10 different things you're going to look at, but each one will depend on who you're looking at. But suffice it to say, these things are all connected, and whichever is the weakest link in the chain is the one that's going to suffer from whether it's an upstream or downstream effect.
Yeah, because I got into, I'm in the fascia work. And so I don't know if you know much about fascia, but that's kind of been, my thing is it's the third system. Like you're saying, everything's connected from the tip of your toe to the top of your head. So it just made more sense as a practitioner not only am I working on, their pain, I'm trying to find a source, whether if it's upstream or downstream. And most times I'm looking at the downstream because I don't have any experience working on the cranial. I have more experience now with the foot.
This is a pretty common thing. Like I was in a race, an indoor track race a couple weeks ago, and at the end of it, I felt just a tiny little twinge in the kind of glute ham insertion in my left leg. And when I started working on it that evening, the place that was all tight was not where it hurt. It was, a few inches away. That was the part that kind of, for whatever reason, got tight and just pulled on that spot where the pain came from. The tightness didn't cause any pain. The pulling on the other thing caused the pain.
And
That's a tricky one. It's all of them. Again, if there was anything that I thought was acceptable, I'd be putting them in our shoes. I don't. So I can tell you, Dr. Irene Davis, when she was at Harvard, she was saying, look, if you're going to keep overstriding and heel striking, if you're not going to, work on your form, have proper gait, then you want a shoe with some cushioning in it because you want to try and protect things as much as possible, even though that won't really protect things. It'll give you a little bit. I mean, like if you're overstriding and heel striking in bare feet, that's going to hurt like crazy. So put something on there so you're not in that much pain. You still want to fix things, but if you're not going to, that's the answer. But there's other things. If you want your feet to be strong, you need to use them. So arch support gets in the way of using your feet. It can feel good in the same way that lying on a Tempur-Pedic mattress feels good, but you stay there long enough and everything atrophies and then you can't walk. Squeezing your toes together is like the easiest thing to fix. That will help you have balance and strength and be able to be on your feet all day more easily. Not elevating your heel, that means you're not screwing with your posture. So that's a biggie. Getting rid of the cushioning and having a thinner sole that gives you enough ground feedback, that's hugely important because your brain then knows how to make all these adjustments starting with your feet. In fact, that one might be the biggie because if you really, that might be the one, now that I think of it, is that's the thing you would want to have is a thinner, flexible sole giving you just enough protection for what you're doing, but enough feedback that your brain can move your foot and, deal with your toes as much as possible, deal with your posture as much as possible.
Love to hear more of upcoming releases. I know you guys just had the pickleball shoe, the Rally 360 that just came out. What are some of the upcoming collections, models that are coming out that you can kind of talk about if you can?
I would talk about a lot of them if I remembered them, but we have enough stuff right now that I can't keep them all in my head. It's like having way too many kids. And it's like, what are you, number 5? So what I do know, we're doing this at the end of February. I do believe that the schedule is for March. I think it's in March. We're releasing a product called the XT Max, like Cross Train XT Max. It is the lightest cross training shoe ever made. It has a new sole material that was developed that is really lightweight, really flexible, really durable, and really sticky all at the same time. And the upper is freakishly lightweight. It's got speed laces, so you just don't have to tie anything, just zip them and you're ready to go. That shoe is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to that one coming out.
Okay, so my last question for you as I'm wrapping this up. Any updates, newsletter, so social, email, website, how can they learn more about Xero Shoes?
It's not rocket science. Go to xeroshoes.com. That's xeroshoes.com. If you're in the EU, xeroshoes.eu. If you're in the UK, xeroshoes.co.uk. We have stores all around the world that carry some of our products. No one has all of them. So you can find the store locator at xeroshoes.com/stores, or just find the store locator in the upper right-hand corner. We have a warehouse in East Denver where we have a showroom where we have every shoe that we make that's available to try on and see what you like. On social, we are at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes, wherever you happen to @ or /.
And then I forgot to ask this one question at the beginning. Why did you name it Xero, Xero? And what does it mean? I should ask that.
Well, it's a good question. When I built the website that first night, I needed a name and I came up with Invisible Shoes. But invisibleshoesplural.com was taken, so I made it invisibleshoe.com. And a very, very successful marketer met me about a year and a half into this project. And the first thing he said when he looked at me, he goes, "I can see them." I say, "But it doesn't feel like anything." He goes, "I can see them." That's not a good word. So we hired for what was at the time for us a very expensive marketing agency. and they came up with a bunch of names. They were all horrible. One of them, I'll spell it for you. Ready? X. So start with an X. X.
Zoics?
I don't know. Couldn't figure out how to say it. I said, no one can say it. No one will know how to spell it. They went, but you can own it. I went, yeah, I don't have the money to get people to learn what it is and how to spell it and how to say it. That's not going to work. The next day at track practice, I had just finished my sprinting training, and I'm sitting in my car. I went, I like the X thing, the X at the beginning. That's cool. What can I do with that? And then I came up with Xero, which is both indicative of, we're not adding anything and just also a cool thing. And I brought that back to the marketing team, and they're like, no, we don't think so. I said, yeah, I already whipped this by the guy who came up with the logo for Adidas and the Air Jordan logo. And he said it's good. And I came up with this logo, and he liked that logo too. So I think I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, I noticed the foot.
Well, it's a foot. I'll tell you, it's another thing too. This was totally unconscious. I always had a fantasy of having a logo that had sort of a subconscious smile. And that's what this is also. So the bottom of the O is kind of like a smile, and the toes are like hair on a face. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So it's something that we've done before. It's like, take the O toes is what we call it, and turn it into something. And a bunch of people did faces that were really fun.
Man, that's awesome. Steven, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed my conversation with you, learning about Xero, yourself, your beginning. So, like I said, thank you for your time, for being on my podcast.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. And we didn't get to say that I love, people doing fascial work. It's very important. Similarly, not a lot of people understand it or know it or are doing it properly. So keep up the good work there. And no, this is just my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.